Hello and welcome to the Lok Sabha TV. I am Anurag Punitha with you. In this edition of Public Forum, we are going to discuss about the US presidential election. By this time next week, the world will have a fairly good idea that who will lead the United States for the next 4 years at least. In the run-up of the long and exhausted campaign for the people of the US, the campaign has been a source of significant stress. The US election process is the longest in the world because of unlike parliamentary democracies or systems. Daunting long campaign has spurred pop singer Sheryl Crow to launch an online petition asking the two major parties to make the next campaign a bit shorter. But despite being long on intensity, this campaign has been conspicuously short on inspiration. But this election campaign will be remembered not for the values the US is known for or claim for, but for being one of the most ugliest, most divisive presidential election in living memory. There have been mudslinging, invectives, threatening of sending jail to the opponents and whatnot. Trump has been in the news for all the reasons you wouldn't want your kids to grow on this kind of the word, many people say. His remarks on Muslims, migrants and women have raised the hair and hackles most. But even then, he is being touted as the strong contender. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton has been hit over and over again with the variations of the same darn scandal about her emails and her server. Her alleged shenanigans and the recent news may queer the pitch for her. The news that the Saudi Arabia has provided 20% of the total funding of a campaign could undo her efforts. So we have been joined by this debate that who would win the US presidential election. I've been joined by Mr. Skandaranjan Tayal. He is a former ambassador and former diplomat. Welcome in our show, Mr. Tayal.
Thank you.
And I've been joined by Deep K. Datta Rai. He is Associate Professor, Jindal Global University of International Affairs. He is the author of the book, The Making of Indian Diplomacy. Welcome also.
Thank you very much.
My first question to you, Mr. Tayal, that about the longevity of this entire campaign, though it happens every 4 years, but this time it's kind of a quite long, painstakingly exhaustive US campaign. Don't you think that even the US citizen would be exhausted and sort of difficult for them to keep the track who's saying what and who's doing what?
Very right. The whole process takes more than 1 year, first within the party and then between the two candidates. And it's a very, very expensive campaign.
Exactly.
That gives rise to all other infirmities that money has to come in, it has to come from lobbies or as it was alleged, maybe from some other countries in some ways or the other. So it will be very good for the system, American system and American democracy, if the whole process can be shortened and can be made a little faster.
Okay, your take on about that the shorter campaign would have been given both the candidates a better chances to keep not to wash the dirty linen in the public.
Well, keeping in mind that the American elections have always been a tamasha. It has been a great festival, a festival that a deeply fractious, a large and divided population can come together on it. This tamasha, though it may be based around political opposition, it actually unites all of Americans and it brings them together, be it liberals, be it the right wing, be it evangelicals, be it Jews, blacks, everyone comes together because there's something for them to talk about and holds them together. That being said, I'm keeping that in mind. I suppose making it shorter, what is the purpose? It is perhaps good for, given the United States' role in the global affairs, that we outside the United States get such a long and hard look at the kinds of people who are running for power, who will become the leaders of what used to be called the free world. So perhaps from an Indian's perspective, it's a very good thing that they have such a long and protracted election process. From an American point of view, perhaps if you're averse to washing your dirty linen in public, and that there's been a great deal of that in these elections, then perhaps say the UK model or the Indian model, where in the UK, you have just 4 weeks of campaigning allowed, etc., and to put limits on it, keeps things hidden. But I suppose if America purports to be and claims to be the greatest democracy, then the right handmaiden of democracy is openness and freedom of information and all of that. And that we have been dealt in spades throughout this campaign. Whether good or bad, that's a different issue.
Okay. But Mr. Dayal, one thing also, there has been a very clear demarcation in terms of likes and dislikes this time. What Mr. Trump said, and he has been saying, what Hillary Clinton said, and what she has been saying. There is a very clear-cut demarcation in terms of likes and dislikes. Who do you support? I mean, in terms, and what do you think can be the scenario 1 week later?
See, many times it is being said that this election is not about issues and personalities have come in and only emails or some how the women are treated, etc. But really, if you think about it a little more in depth, then very important issues have been raised. Hillary Clinton is perhaps more of the same. That whatever policies are being followed by President Obama and earlier by President Clinton, that would be followed. But Donald Trump is coming up with a very different agenda, and an agenda which really touches the hearts and minds of the masses. He's talking about jobs all the time. And for a simplistic way, he is putting it in a very simplistic way that he will do this, that he will stop immigration. He will have a wall on the border of Mexico, for which Mexico will pay. He will put 40% duty on everything which is manufactured in China and being dumped by China in the United States. So he will not be able to do anything of this, but this strikes a chord among the masses. So that is one part. And people there are really nervous about immigration and also about this growing threat of Islamic fundamentalism. And the other side, Hillary Clinton is not even ready to call it Islamic fundamentalism. So there are issues, there are very important issues for the American electorate which have been flagged. And time and again it is being hijacked because of emails or how the
She has not been saying because of the clash of the interest, because she has taken the money, or her foundation has taken the money from.
Certainly, it is about $25 million she has taken from Saudi Arabia, 5 million from that is about 150 crores. So definitely it will influence.
Will it go down to the American public in terms one of the reports from America comes and US comes that Saudi Arabia has been the source of terrorism also to support and Wahhabism and radicalization, and one of the candidates is taking money from that same country. Will it go down and will queer the pitch for her?
See, Saudi Arabia has been hunting with the hound and running with the hare all the time. Remember who were the 11 hijackers in 9/11, that they were all Saudi Arabians. So, but they have been able to play, they have been funding the Bush Foundation, Senior Bush Foundation. They have been funding Hillary Clinton Foundation. So, they are indirectly influencing policy making. Now, the lobbyists are there, and that is a system which Americans have. But this will certainly not go down well with the masses. And I am sure Trump campaign will make full exploitation of this. But ultimately, even Donald Trump's money is his own money, but that is all by tax. You know, he's been taught dodging taxes.
He
avoided taxes, but he takes he says it with great pride. But perhaps the masses also feel that to dodge the taxman is a success. How it gels with the a common man. If we talk about in our own society that I saved this much tax, I mean it's a point of glory. It's a point of.
How do you see it in terms? I mean, he himself is a proclaimed. I mean, he himself said that I have done this in terms of the kind of words he has said about women. People say that he is a kind of self-proclaimed lecher, and then now he is saying that I avoided taxes, I didn't pay taxes in terms. So will American public take him seriously as a US president?
Well, on the tax issue, on all of these issues, there will always be some people in the United States who will take him seriously and ignore any of these negatives about him. And there will be other people who will be ready to nail him to the cross about these issues. But what it says overall about Donald Trump is that, yes, he has certain skeletons in his cupboard. Now, some of those I personally take less seriously and should matter much less in choosing a politician than what he himself has called locker room talk. But of course, it does have implications, especially in a country like America, about the morality and the ethics of the leader, which has traditionally been very important. In the United States, they really do like to look into the locker room and find out what's happening over there, unlike various other countries. So that's in their culture. On the things that he has said, Forget about the things that were recorded off, when off the cuff and when he wasn't aware, those personal comments about women. But the comments he's made about taxes and finances, that is somewhat worrying because he has, I think, misunderstood his public. And I'll give you an example. He then, to defend himself, he said he was a clever guy and Warren Buffett does the same. Now, he mentioned Warren Buffett because Warren Buffett, though he's an extremely successful investor, leads a very, very low profile life. But then Warren Buffett came out and released all of his tax claims, etc., to say that he hadn't done anything of the sort. And this kind of misunderstanding, I hope, for the sake of the American people and the rest of the world, was just Donald Trump trying to protect himself when he found himself with his back against the wall, rather than showing that he's really such a poor judge of character, of significant people, I'm sure he's known Warren Buffett all his life, most likely.
Okay. But he comes out as a person who blurts out without thinking anything and says something which he normally retreats after some time.
Indeed. Now, I was speaking to an advisor to the Trump campaign, and his justification for this was that, especially on foreign affairs, which is my particular area of interest, is that Mr. Trump is learning on the campaign trail.
Okay.
And what it should be taken as a positive that he's not backtracking, but he's willing to learn and change his point of view, unlike his opponent, which the Trump campaign says, outright lies about what her record is on international matters.
Okay, what do you think about in totality? I mean, don't you think it's kind of saddening in terms of that the United States could produce only two candidates which are not that bright and what should I be saying, that world leader?
That bright, I think one is has been successful in business in some ways.
Okay.
Hillary Clinton has been a successful politician in some ways. But this point is there that perhaps Donald Trump doesn't have that gravitas, that background, that knowledge about several issues, whether they are social, whether they are economic, whether they are strategic. But some of his pronouncements have been anti-establishment and they have been quite right. He has been praising President Putin.
Right.
And he has taken a stand on Syria, which is very similar to the stand which we take in India. That this is a problem which has been created by Americans and the West, whether it is destruction of Libya or Syria.
But his position and his theories of, the foreign affairs will change the entire dynamics of the world. In terms of what US has been doing, the NATO has been doing, he will undo the entire process.
It is a good thing because NATO is still taking a very Eurocentric view of the world in which Russia is the villain.
Right.
When it is, they are still fighting the Second World War and the First World War. They are not looking at the future where China will be the greatest adversary for America, and I think Trump understands this, and Hillary does not understand this.
So he's seeing the future in terms of what you are saying.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you also believe that he will change the entire his foreign affairs, his understanding of the world affairs will change the entire dynamics if he comes into the power? Will change the entire course of power balance in Europe, in the Middle East, and the other parts of the world?
Well, I hope it does. And he is indeed a maverick. He is someone who seems to be quite revolutionary. He, of course, comes across as a buffoon. But think back to George Bush and the one who signed the Indo-US nuclear deal. He got America into the quagmire of Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was also dismissed as a buffoon. But as far as one is concerned, sitting in South Asia, at least in India, it was a very good thing that he was president, and he gave us a negotiation which undid the global nuclear architecture constructed from World War II. So I hope Donald Trump can do something and can bring about systemic change in the way in which George Bush had done. And one of the ways in which he is already showing that he's learning about foreign policy is that, to begin with, he was very, very he was sort of evenly balanced between Israel and the Palestinians.
Right.
Now he's accused of having done an almost 180-degree turn and gone back on his word, and he's even called for the building of settlements in the West Bank and occupying it and that sort of thing. But that probably shows that he has now realized that, well, there has been a lot of violence that has been inflicted upon the Israelis from the other side, and he's taking note of that, which is why he's saying he's changing tack. Similarly, of course, in the Middle East and Syria, he hasn't been making it up as he goes along.
Okay.
Now, Hillary Clinton misrepresented what her role was in the third debate on the Syrian, in 2012, she said that she had played a central role in getting the blueprint together for a ceasefire and peace talks over there. But that isn't the case. In 2012, I think Kofi Annan was severely impeded by the United States and Hillary Clinton.
Right. We're going to stop for a short break here, then we'll come back. We'll talk about the who wins in US. Will have a cascading effect in the entire world, and what does it mean to India, Indian policy, Indian foreign policy, what does it mean? We'll discuss after the short break. Welcome back. In the public forum, we are talking about who comes into the Oval Office 1 week later. And my question to you, Mr. Dayal, that Trump also trades into the kind of fear and hatred. But what about the Hillary Clinton? What has been her shortcomings in terms of her policies, her articulation for the domestic policies and international perspective, whatever she has been saying?
I think Donald Trump has been able to connect with the masses in different ways. Whether tapping into their insecurity about job and immigration, etc. Hillary Clinton has not been able to touch the chords of the hearts of the masses.
Okay.
Because whatever she is saying, it is more like continuation of earlier positions. So, which has really been bringing America down, whether it is their economy, whether it is their strategic position in the world. So, the electorate does not expect something dramatic from her.
Okay.
Their faith in Trump may be totally misplaced, but at least they think, or some of them 30-35%, now 46%, feel that he will be able to bring in change, make America great, and I'll bring in jobs and things of that kind. Hillary has not been saying that, or if she is saying, she is not convincing, because her policy prescriptions are more of the same what has been happening.
Okay.
And otherwise she goes in so much of detail which the normal person sitting in a bar and having a beer is not able to understand.
Okay.
He wants some punchlines and 3-4 build a wall, stop these fellows coming. But Hillary has not been able to connect it. That she's trying to play on the fears of the blacks or the Hispanics.
Or the Muslims.
Now all the blacks have not been coming out in great numbers because they have been hearing this from the Clintons for the last 20 years. Which has not made any difference to their life. Their life has deteriorated. Now Trump is saying this, they give me a chance. And this is resonating with the blacks. All the
so
latest
what you're suggesting means that whatever the
at
Hillary
an
is
emotional
getting the
level,
support
she
is anti-Trump.
It is anti-Trump. There is no large chunk of voters who are pro-Hillary.
Okay.
They are anti-Trump because of his pronouncements about women or about Hispanics or about something else. Whereas 30% or maybe more are pro-Trump, despite all his angularities and his very
shenanigans
or acting.
Do you also believe in this? There is kind of a division in the US voters. Either they are the pro-Trump or the anti-Trump. And who are the anti-Trumps are supporting Hillary?
Well, not entirely. I don't think it's only a vote against Trump that is leading to support for Hillary. She is a woman. She has, I think, a large section of the female population of the United States backing up on that simple platform, which is sex. She also has, I think, the support of various other groups. They might be regarded as smaller groups, but they're significant groups, liberal groups in the United States, people who support certain rights for various sexual groups, etc. But these are wealthy organizations.
Even corporate America may be with her.
And there is, of course, corporate America that also has an idea of where she's going, because, as was said earlier, she is part of the system. She is not a maverick. She's not going to change things and shake up the system at all. On Trump's side, he is now going to make a concerted effort, it's already somewhat underway, to try and cherry pick some of those interest groups that Hillary Clinton has traditionally enjoyed the support of. Because partly they realized, blacks realized, various what are called interest groups realized that for 30 years nothing has really been delivered by the Clintons. So Trump is now targeting black voters, etc. I mean, I think part of his outreach to Indians, as in Indians from India who are settled in the United States, was part of that, to try and target minority groups, useful, powerful, wealthy minority groups, to help support and perk up his campaign.
Okay. In the totality, if I say that he's stumbling somewhat on the moral ground, not on the policy level or on the other level. Though the Clinton is floundering in terms that what she doesn't know what to say clearly as for the job creation, as for the world affairs. Do you also believe this?
The poll percentages seem to say that people are taking these emails, etc., a little more seriously as compared to the charges, because charges against Trump are the same. Different women are coming and saying the same thing. And tax. There has not been anything very new. And now the latest BBC poll of polls says 48% for Hillary Clinton and 46% for Donald Trump. And one ABC News something has given 1% more for Trump.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Trump has again and again totally defied all predictions. He has proven all political pundits wrong. When he threw his hat in the ring and he was one of the candidates, everybody was laughing that this fellow will not survive even one primary, and then he demolished 10 or 11 very established Republican candidates.
Right.
Don't take him lightly. And again, the indication of Brexit. No poll, no pundit, no economist, nobody said that there will be the Britain referendum will go for Brexit. Because the people like us who discuss and the masses, there is a disconnect.
Okay. One more thing that his team has taken one line from the Modi campaign, the Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar, to please, I think, the Indian Americans over there. But what about the, if he comes into the power, what do you think that Indian perspective and Indian policy, if anybody comes in, both the candidates, how do you see it?
You see, for India, the major issues are, one is the visa issue. H1B, L1, because a lot of our professionals are working there. His ire, Trump's ire has till now been more on Mexicans, immigrants, etc. But he really goes after securing the jobs for Americans, etc. There could be a problem there for us, where Obama, etc. have been increasing H1B visas. That is one issue. Second issue, for very strategic reasons, is what are the relations between United States, Russia and China. Because the way the politics has been playing out in the last 4 or 5 years, very Eurocentric view, and America, because whether it is Ukraine, they have just not been able to understand what are the Russia's calculations, what are their fears, what are their apprehensions. Whatever senior Bush had promised to Russians when Soviet Union broke up, that has totally been forgotten by America.
Exactly.
And they are pushing Russians in the Chinese orbit, which is very damaging for us. So if he may do something totally like going into Iraq, what Junior Bush did, that is a separate matter, because he is impulsive, he doesn't know much about history. So he may land America and the world in more problems. That is very unpredictable, one cannot say what will happen. But as far as perception of President Putin and Russia is concerned, and his understanding of Middle East is concerned, he is on the right track, and he is going against the establishment, and that will be a good thing for us.
Okay. Do you also believe that his coming as a president, or I mean, what do you see that Indian perspective or Indian angle can be? Is India going to suffer or benefit if any one of them come as a US president?
Well, let's take what that Trump advisor said to me at face value, that he's learning international relations as he goes along. Let's take them at their word. Let's take him at his word. If we do, then what we can say is that he's at least willing to learn about what is happening around the world and tailor America's reactions or actions to a developing, constantly changing situation. I think that is as much as one can say about a man who has said so much and changed his position on so many things. But what we can, I think, say with much greater certainty is that we do know what kind of a Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was. We do know what her background is. The very same things that she's saying make her a better candidate for the president, I would say discounts her from an Indian perspective to be president. And the reason I say that is because with Syria, for example, if one looks back to her pronouncements, to her negotiating positions all the way back to the Arab Spring, the first thing on her agenda was regime change. Get Assad out. Then we can talk about a ceasefire and peace and all of that. First, let's get the regime out. Then let's talk about peace and democracy and nice things.
But there has been a kind of a foreign policy establishment's perspective entirely US. What she has been saying, what she said at that point of time, US wants.
Yes, I think that the great outsider that Trump is, and the very fact that he has changed his mind, I think shows that he's the outsider. I think is a good thing as compared to a Secretary of State who has this record. And I'll say why that's a good thing. From the Indian point of view, it's a good thing because we will have a less aggressive and a less pushy United States that is constantly knocking on New Delhi's door demanding things. Like if you go and look at the WikiLeaks cables, there's a constant stream of American visitors going to visit at the time the head of the Americas division in the Ministry of External Affairs, who was Jai Shankar, day after day asking for the same thing. Even though Indian officials had explained to the Americans why what the Americans wanted could not be delivered, the Americans just kept on hammering. And I think that would probably get a lot worse. There would be a lot more conditions and conditionalities attached to India's engagement with the United States if Hillary Clinton came to the White House.
Okay, my last question to you: that what is the role of the foreign policy establishment in Washington or in New York, or what about the impact of the Pentagon and the think tanks in the United States, who is treading the same path since last 30 or 40 years? Will they have an impact on the elections? Because if the Trump comes, he will change the entire course of the foreign policy issue.
Establishment may not be able to change the election result, but they will be able to change Trump even if he wins. Establishment in America is very, very powerful. Their think tanks, their academics, and they will create such a web around President Trump. He would not know what he said before elections and what he is doing after elections. So he will become pro-establishment. And ultimately, everybody has to come to the center. And he is a little outside. And if he stays that course, hats off to him. But I'll give him very little chance of doing that.
Okay. Do you also believe that and the foreign policy establishment, or the think tanks, or the other people?
I believe that they will exert pressure on him. Obviously, that they will be a force of change on him. But if they change him from the kind of pronouncements that he made in his 2011 book, Time to Get Tough, where he said he would slap a 15% tax on the kind of companies that employ Indians on the H-1B visas, he's now retracting from those hard positions. He recently said he was going to impose a 35% tax on Ford cars built overseas. Now, Ford has just opened a new factory in India, part of the whole Make in India initiative. So if he retracts, if the establishment can get him to pull back from these statements, which I think are the product of an American, myopic, very American point of view, but he's now stepping onto a new stage.
Okay, my last question, very short answer. You are crossing your fingers that who is going to come, or you are believing on the kind of surveys that the news is coming from US, that who's taking lead to whom?
I'll go 60-40 for Trump.
And you?
You're asked me to look into the crystal ball. I'll go for Trump, but I don't know how sure I am about that.
Okay, on this note, we are going to wrap up this program, and by the next week, as I said earlier, we will have a fairly good idea of who will lead the United States for the next 4 years. But this will be the historic moment in terms of if Hillary wins, she will be the first US female president. If the Trump wins, he will be also very controversial US president probably. Thank you very much, Mr. Dayal, for coming here and discussing with us. Mr. Deep, thank you also very much.
Thank you.
That's all we have in this edition of Public Forum. Thank you very much for watching us.